And hello, everyone. I am sports journalist Manu Kakopian. Today, we are joined by former world titleist in the 160-pound division and now trainer to world champions and potential future champions, and Andy Lee. Andy, thank you for taking the time and joining us all the way from Ireland. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, Manok. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for interviewing me. Uh, like everybody else, staying inside, staying in lockdown, following the guidelines, and just trying to keep safe.
Have you discovered corners of your house that you didn't know existed yet?
No, but you realize how much I guess trash you have around the house and things you have to do, clean and fix up, and bits and pieces. The more you look at it, the more you do, the more you see. The more you do, the more there is to do. So
Uh-huh.
keep me busy.
Well, it's crazy. The last time we were talking to each other in person, we were in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. Thousands of people, the world operating under normal circumstances. Little did we know that just a few short days later, our lives would turn on its head. But going back on that night, on February 22nd at the MGM Grand, when Tyson Fury, the fighter you co-trained, along with Sugar Hill Steward. Uh, were you surprised how great Tyson was that night?
No, when you do everything, when you do the right things in training, you get the right results. And he absolutely did everything right in training. Now, I was a little bit nervous, I guess, the night before the fight because we were so committed to that game plan that you saw, which everyone thought we were crazy. Even when we were saying it, they didn't believe we were going to do that. That Tyson was going to be aggressive and go to Wilder and take the fight to him. And it was, obviously, it was a big departure from what how he had fought most of his career. He'd always been a boxer, a trickster, a slickster, a feinter, and a really clever fighter. This was clever, but in a different way. And so, common consensus was continue and do what he did in the first fight. Don't suffer the two knockdowns, and you'll win the fight. Wilder's the biggest puncher in heavyweight history, so stay away from him. But we went against that and went the complete opposite and took it to Wilder, and it really paid off. And it was a very satisfying victory to be part of because of that, because for that reason, because it was against the common convention, and we believed in it, and it really worked.
Now, you train other fighters like Jason Quigley and Paddy Donovan, but for someone like Tyson Fury, who's going to fight for the heavyweight title, for him to go out and give his game plan to a T for the entire world to know, it's kind of a card that I thought Wilder thought he was bluffing, because Wilder, throughout the entire camp, said, I don't believe a word Tyson Fury says. And Tyson Fury actually said everything that he was going to do. With you being a former fighter and world champion yourself, did you find that as the right tactic going into that fight?
Yeah. Look, it was risky. It was risky because you're standing in front of, as I said, the biggest puncher that's been around in a long, long time. But it was educated pressure. And look, it was a remarkable performance by Tyson. Sugar Hill deserves all the credit because he was the real trainer. He was the real one doing the work with Tyson every day. I had my part to play, but it was really Sugar Hill doing all the work. And like we can preach something and teach something and train a certain way, but the fighter has to go out there and do it. And when somebody's under stress and duress and in a fight, you'll always revert back to what you're comfortable with. And so for Tyson to go out there and completely change his style, fight the way he did, it's one of the it's one of the best performances I've seen. Like, you just compare the two fights, the first fight and this fight, and they're both fought in between and had some progression. If anything, Wilder's gotten better since the first fight because he had two great knockouts against Brazil and then Ortiz. And look what Tyson did. Like, look, they look like two completely different fights. They act two completely fights. Look like two completely different fighters in there. with how the results went.
Do you think Deontay got better, or actually Tyson got better? Because Tyson was coming in still off of his, downfall of his days in 2018 when he fought him the first time. Well, with all credit to Wilder for improving along with Brazil and Ortiz camps, I feel like while Fury gained a lot more ground than Tyson perhaps, than Wilder perhaps did, do you think that makes the performance even more impressive the second time around?
Yeah, and the work Ben Davidson did with him as well, we built on that in terms of the fitness he had. Yeah, he was coming back. It was only the first two comeback fights he had before Wilder. They weren't really fights. They were kind of sparring sessions and really getting him in shape. Then he fights Wilder with really, after 6 months of being completely overweight. And since then, like you said, he had two fights, one against Thomas Schwartz and then Otto Wallen, which was a tough fight. I thought it was a good performance because he had to change his game plan due to a cut. And so he had those things behind him in terms of his conditioning was stronger. He was in in a fighter's mindset more regularly than he had been. So yeah, definitely he improved in a lot of aspects. But in those short 8 weeks we trained him, in terms of his improvements, you could see his jab was a completely different jab now. It's a weapon now. It's a real tool. It's not a flicker or an occupation, like a jab that will occupy you. It's a jab that will damage you. I think that was the first. You can see it. I think the first round he lands a jab on Wilder, and Wilder's eyes noticeably open, and he realizes this is a different guy. So yeah, Tyson has made huge improvements, and the thing is, he's only going to continue to improve. He's only going to get better and better and better.
Now, with Sugar Hill Steward leading the game plan, bringing in that Kronk Gym mojo that you had throughout your entire career with the late great Emanuel Steward, he was your trainer from the beginning until he passed away. I'm curious as to what new wrinkles you introduced to Tyson Fury's game throughout this camp, and what were you specifically working on with him?
For me, it was more, honestly, Sugar Hill was doing the work in the gym with the technique and stuff. Me and Sugar Hill, I would never like contradict or talk or correct anything while Sugar Hill was working with him. But after and in between the training, me and Sugar Hill would have a full debrief. And so would I with Tyson ourselves. We'd spend a lot of time talking during and after meals. And it's about the attitude. And we talked about that, like in the build-up, the Kronk style, but also the Kronk attitude in terms of you go out and take the man out. That's what Kronk's all about. That's what made Kronk what it was. And yeah, so with Tyson, it was always reinforcing that with what they were working on with Sugar Hill. And because he'd been so tuned in that other style, there were days when he wasn't getting it, and we just had to comfort him, tell him this will pay off, it will pay off. And we kept talking and working it out. And Tyson's a very knowledgeable guy himself. He's a boxing encyclopedia. So when I work with him, it was definitely collaborative in terms of, it's not like, you're preaching to somebody who doesn't know anything. This guy knows if not like the same amount, if not more about than boxing than I do. So you have to take his opinion into account too. And we always came to a good level, but yeah, we talked a lot of talking.
Do you think that Tyson needed to play the mind games within himself to kind of bring this Kronk mystique back into his life, take him back to a part of his life that was fond for him, and to kind of have that added mojo going into the fight? Do you think that was kind of an X factor that helped him too?
I think it was definitely like, sometimes, change is as good as a rest, and bringing in fresh people, it's, reinvigorate. I think it might have reinvigorated him, and working on things that he'd never done before. It's not good working on his strengths. We worked on his weaknesses, things that making him better, punching correctly, his balance, his footwork, which everyone says he has great footwork, which he does. when he's moving in a defensive pattern. When being aggressive, it's a different footwork. So we worked on a lot of things, and it was very hard, but he committed to it. And look, as I said from the start of the show, doing everything absolutely correct. He didn't cut one corner, not even half a corner. He didn't allow himself one soft drink, one bit of chocolate, any sweet, no treat, no white. Like, he just lived the Spartan lifestyle. He trained, dedicated himself. Like, and he's so serious about his work and so focused about his work. And I guess that's what all the great fighters do, because they have to, as well as wanting to and doing and having the desire. He knew he had to, because he was in there with a great champion in Wilder.
You spent your entire career with Emanuel Steward. What is the one thing that you're making sure to pass down to your fighters from a coaching standpoint, from a training standpoint, from an advice standpoint?
Oh, it's hard to say. Emmanuel is his philosophy is all encompassing, so it's hard to really say one thing, but I definitely implement a lot of the things we used to do, and say a lot of the things. And Emmanuel was great at giving these fighters confidence, but it was never built on falsities. It was always grounded in hard work and good techniques in training, and results, and the emphasis on going for a knockout, which is like I said, the Kronk way, and there's many ways to knock people out. And Emmanuel used to teach me all those little tricks, setups, and how to dress your man up before you knock him out. So that's I do all. And the importance of the jab. The jab is so key in boxing. It's so underrated, and it's the most important punch. But people get away from it because it's the first punch you learn. It's so easy to do, and everyone wants to throw big, hard combinations. Where the simple jab, and you can vary the jab. There's a million different ways you can throw a jab. So, yeah, I just work the jab a lot on my fighters.
What is one fond memory that you always like to recall and relive throughout your days with Emanuel in the Kronk gym?
There are many memories. I lived with Emmanuel all those years. I was in Detroit, and we used, like, some of the best memories, not even related to boxing, would have been hanging out or going out for meals, or driving around Detroit and him interacting with people. And he was an unbelievable man. He was one of a kind, really. He had this mystique about him, this aura, and people were. He made everyone feel good. Like, we used to we'd be in Vegas nearly every weekend when he'd do HBO, and he'd be talking to whoever it may be, be Bob Arum, or be dealing with politicians, lawyers, and senators, and then he'd fly back into Detroit, hit the red eye after the fights, land in the morning in Detroit, go straight downtown to the rib joints, and he'd be talking to homeless people on the street and treating them with the same respect and class, and as he was talking to Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. That's the type of ability he had, and he's one of a kind. Good man, one of the best.
Yeah, and there's so many stories out there, and one of them recently got my attention was on Mike Tyson has a podcast, and he mentioned that he brought on Eminem, the rapper, onto his podcast, and Eminem, who's from Detroit, of course, talked about the time when he was taking boxing and using it as a workout, and he would go to Emanuel Steward's house every week for boxing and sparring sessions. And do you recall any of those times?
That was slightly out. That was just before I arrived. But obviously Eminem was a huge star, so I heard all about it. And I remember the Kalinga was Octavio Lara was the kid who actually punched him up, and Octavio was a hell of a fighter, really. And maybe Emmanuel just wanted to test Eminem out a little bit, but Octavio would do that to most pros. So Emmanuel trained them a lot. Emmanuel trained a lot of guys like that. A lot of Wesley Snipes and different people like that.
Of course,
he had that side. He had that side to him, But as I said, it never affected him, all that fame and fortune and all that. He was still the same man.
Who were some of the other famous people that would come into the Grunk gym like it was a 24-hour fitness just for a workout?
No, they didn't come down there because they knew if they come down there they'd have to box. It was a very intimidating atmosphere. But there used to be a guy called Ban. His real name was Arthur Longhorn. He was a pro fighter himself, but he would test everybody who came in. You know, he'd shout in their face, fresh meat," and you'd have to get in the ring and spar. So there wasn't many tourists in the Crunch gym. If you could, no, if you went down there, you'd have to hang out. You'd have to hang in the ring and survive. So yeah.
It's part of the hazing process, as they say.
Yeah, yeah, a bit more than that, but yeah.
Hmm. Did now for you going back with Tyson, the third fight, everyone is talking about it already. We don't know when it'll happen. July 18 was a date, October 3 is a date, but the longer this pandemic continues, the more likelihood it is that it could be delayed, especially for an event of that magnitude that requires nearly 20,000 people in an arena. Um, how are you going to make sure Tyson stays sharp outside of the gym, outside of his training camp, that he does not have any rust going in? One of the big things with Tyson is that he needs to stay busy all the time. We see his Instagram workouts, but how do you make sure he's staying busy?
Well, the way it is with these restrictions, even for us to train, we're not just with him, we'll say with Paddy or Jason, you can't train one-on-one because of this, you know, social distancing. And I myself am very aware of it. I have a wife and daughter, and my wife is expecting a baby, so I'm definitely not going to be training anyone to bring it home, you know, bring that disease home. But Tyson does these workouts. He keeps in shape, relative shape. And that's all he needs. He's not going to lose too much. The thing is, everyone's in the same situation. It's not like he's sitting around and everyone else is fighting and sparring and boxing. Everyone is actually training on their own at the moment until it looks like there's going to be a lift in sanctions. But like, who knows when the fight's going to be, and if it'll even go ahead? Who knows the way the landscape will be? You know, it could be 6 or 7 months, it could be longer, it could be this time next year. We don't know which way it's going to go. So Tyson's keeping fit. Follow him on Instagram. You see him every day doing his work, and that's enough for him.
Are you envisioning to execute the same blueprint as you did in the rematch? Are we going to see a replay all over again in the third?
Well, look, that was only 8 weeks with Tyson, and you can see the improvement. Imagine when he has another 8 weeks at least, and there's a lot more he can even improve on now. I don't want to highlight anything, but he has a lot he can work on and improve on, and you're only scratching the surface from what we're seeing so far.
Is this kind of you know, he likes to mention always that he beat the longest reigning heavyweight champion in Klitschko. Do you feel that Fury now has the elements to repeat what he ended up beating it in the past himself by becoming a long reigning heavyweight champion? What needs to happen for that?
I think it's down to his desire, how long he wants to fight. The thing is now, with this era of heavyweights, they're all very dangerous. And I think it's as good as the heavyweight division has been since the great days of Ali, Hagler, and Ali, Frazier, and Foreman. You know, Ken Norton, Ron Lyle, those type of guys. You know, Jerry Quarry. It's as good as it has been since those guys. When you look at the heavyweight division, obviously Wilder, Joshua, Fury on top. You got a good supporting cast: Andy Ruiz, Dillian White. And then you got your young up-and-coming fighter. You still got Charles Martin, who I think is still a contender if he can get himself together. You got like Daniel Dubois coming up. He's going to fight Joe Joyce. There's Hughie Fury, who's Joseph Parker. There's probably 10 or 15 guys there who are good contenders. And yeah, so I think it's a real good time for heavyweights. But I think Tyson will reign as long as he wants to. He's talked about retiring after two fights. And I can see that happening. I can see him fulfilling that. I think if he beats Wilder, beats Joshua, I think he's cemented himself probably. He's probably the greatest heavyweight of all time. It's hard to say because you look back at history and put those guys on a pedestal, but who could really beat him? when you see his size, his ability, how he fights, and how he's going to fight once he continues his training. Yeah, and if he beats those two guys, he's the greatest heavyweight of all time.
You talk about him perhaps retiring soon. When I interviewed him back in January, I don't know if you recall the interview with him in the LA Times when he was in the jacuzzi. When I interviewed him, and we talked about retirement and what his post-boxing life may look like, he said he didn't even want to think about that because it was scary and he wasn't sure how he would deal without boxing in his life. I feel like it's something that he would want to do just based off of that conversation that I had with him. I felt like it's something where he wanted to keep boxing as long as possible just for his own mental sanity as well too. How do you think he's dealing with being on top of the world again? It's most likely a different situation for him now.
Yeah, I think this time he had it the first time and he wasn't appreciated, or didn't get the recognition for beating Klitschko, and I think it demoralized him, and he kind of rejected boxing then and kind of tainted it for him because he thought that once he won the titles, everyone would give him the adoration. But this time he has gotten that. And all he's done for people with mental health issues, he's come back himself. Like, but he's just like, I think he's in good spirits. I think he's more prepared. I think he's better prepared now to handle. And his level of fame now is bigger than it's ever been. He's one of the biggest sports stars in the world, regardless of sports. No, not just boxing. And I called him, it was about 2 weeks after the fight, I called him up, we were FaceTiming. He was sitting in his local cafe on his own, eating an omelette, looking out the window. It was raining and he was driving a pickup truck, like not even a, So he was like, look at me. And I said, there you are, you just won the heavyweight championship of the world, Ring magazine belt, the only man to do it since Muhammad Ali. And here you are, sitting on your own in the old rundown cafe. But he was happy, he was very happy. So listen, I think he's in a much better place to handle what he's going through now, all that he's been through, and he's got his family with him, and he knows that training for him is the key. Keeping in shape physically will help him mentally.
Now, I'd like for you to wear your analyst hat a little bit and tell me, what does Deontay Wilder need to do correctly for him to have a chance in actually beating Fury? What can Wilder do?
He has to try to be more aggressive. He has to try to be more aggressive and improve his balance, which is not an easy thing to do. It's something they should be working on now, even when there's nothing happening, not just in camp. But I watched the fight. I've only watched it maybe 3 or 4 times, and yeah, his balance didn't look good to me. And I know he's had a lot of excuses, the suit he wore and all, but maybe there was some issue with his balance. But I think he's definitely got his eardrum burster, which will affect your balance. And the first right hand, Tyson Fury, first big right hand he threw, might have busted his eardrum. But I heard they're bringing in Joe Goosen into the camp. That would be a good move. It's good trainer, respected trainer. But Mark Witten's also next in training. J. Diaz to work with was a class act, like to be opposite, to be opposed to. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I just think he needs to be more aggressive. I think he was taken aback by Tyson's pressure. When a big man like that is coming at you, it's very hard. It feels like you're in quicksand. It's very hard to get air, to get time, to get to think, yeah. So I think he needs to be more aggressive.
Now, how many times have you been in Tyson's Corner for a fight? Can you remind me again?
Just one.
It was the first. I wasn't sure if you were there for any of the ones before that. Now, with that said, the big thing was the towel being thrown as well too. How do you feel about a corner throwing in a towel now that you've been on both sides of this?
I think they did the right thing. I think it's some part of it is saving face, and that you had to. If no fight wants to be stopped, regardless of in which way, into whether it's towel being thrown and the referee stopping it or whatever, you're being stopped yourself. No fight wants to be stopped. So him coming out and saying that I didn't want the towel to be thrown in, that I didn't agree with that. That's the right thing to do. That's the fighter spirit. But I think now he probably understands. If you haven't watched the fight and seen the fight, and I think Mark really did an excellent job, and he probably saved Deontay. He might have saved Deontay's career, because you can't take a sustained beating like that from a man of Tyson Fury's size, 19-stone man who's punching now with authority. So, look, I think it was a right call. I'm not sure what I would have done in the same position. I probably would have done the same thing.
You know, like we said, you're a trainer now. You also co-manage fighters with Paddy Donovan and Scott Quigley. Talk to me about that process. What has it been like having sole ownership of a fighter in the sense of from a training aspect and guiding careers? Do you find that part of your new career to be exciting for you?
Yeah, it's like when you work with somebody like Top Rank, the manager's job, well, early stages of the career is pretty much redundant, you know. But Paddy, in terms of, they'll tell him who he's going to. He's got his minimums guaranteed, purses in his contract. They'll give us a list of opponents. I'll pick one because I know who Paddy will beat. He beat most guys now at this level. He beat them all, and we'll go and fight. But it does take a lot. Does take a lot of time. I only manage Paddy. I don't manage Jason. So with Jason, I just train him. We turn up and fight. Where with Paddy, I'm organising every single thing, and like Emanuel did for me, down to the boots he wears, the socks he wears, you know, the outfits, the corner shirts, where we're going to be, the travel, the administration, everything is done. I know, but it's a lot of work, but it's something I enjoy, and I think some part of it's very fulfilling, and it's like Emmanuel used to do. Adam Booth was the same, very obsessional, very controlling, but it's good. Fighters need that. A fighter needs that to know where. All the fighter wants to do is turn up and fight, train and fight, and I have to be on top of everything else. So he doesn't have to worry about a thing.
Do you want to turn yourself into a full-time trainer at some point? Does that interest you? Do you want to become the next Buddy McGirt, or do you want to become
I don't know.
Great
at this stage, I don't know. Because at this stage in my life, I have a young family, and it's like, you know, boxing. When you're training fighters, they become your family. You know, you're putting your time and effort into them. And right now, at this stage of my life, no, certainly not. I got Paddy, who's my number one. Jason, I'm training, and he's improving a lot. Jason Quigley, within without this time next year, he would have been fighting for a world title, only for this virus, so it might set him back a little bit longer. But he's right on course to fight for a world title, and if he keeps progressing the way he is, he'll win a world title. And that's pretty much my hands full. Tyson came out of the blue, asked me to help train him, and obviously it's the heavyweight championship of the world. You're not going to say no. But that's about it. That's pretty much all I can handle at the moment in terms of my commitments, time, and energy. And like Adam Booth says to say, and it's true, the most valuable thing we have in life is time, and where you spend it. You know, it's just time and energy, and where I can put it. And as much as I want to put it into the boxers, I put it into my family.
And from what I gathered, we have another little one on the way. When is your wife due?
We'll be having a baby in June. My daughter will be 3 in June, and I will have a new baby in June. All going well.
So you're hitting the home stretch here. Definitely different times, unexpected times to be having a child. Hopefully you'll be surrounded by your family in full to celebrate properly and to begin the new chapter.
Not for Zoom. Hopefully not for Zoom.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Calling in from Ireland late at night. We appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing you soon again at Fight Night.
Talk soon.
Absolutely. You have a good rest of your night.